The vast majority of the people killed in the 9/11 attacks were, of course, American citizens. The second most prevalent nationality among 9/11 victims was British. A former New York City police officer says a British tabloid called News of the World contacted him and told him they would pay him to retrieve private phone records of British citizens killed on 9/11. The ex-officer claims reporters wanted the victims' phone numbers and details of the calls they made and received in the days leading up to 9/11. With phone numbers of the victims, News of the World could hack into the victim's voicemail to retrieve and publish those voicemails. Former New York City cop says he turned the tabloid down. On July 7, 2005, in the morning rush hour, 4 coordinated suicide bombings on the London transit system killed 52 people. That attack is known in England as 7/7. The family of at least one 7/7 victim was notified last week that their phones may have also been hacked by News of the World. British soldiers killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, their names and contact information and those of their families have also turned up in the notebooks of a private investigator employed by News of the World. The paper is not denying or confirming that its investigator hacked into the phones of dead service members, but the paper did put out a statement saying that if that did happen, it would be absolutely appalled and horrified. In 2002, a 13-year-old girl named Millie Dowler disappeared in a London suburb. In the 6 months between the day she disappeared and the day her body was found, News of the World journalists hacked into Millie Dowler's cell phone and may have deleted some of her voicemails in order to make room for new ones to come in, hoping that would provide the paper clues to the girl's whereabouts. The paper's actions gave the girl's family and investigators false hope that the girl was still alive and still accessing her phone. In 2006, another Rupert Murdoch-owned tabloid paper reported that the infant son of then Prime Minister Gordon Brown had been diagnosed with the respiratory disease cystic fibrosis. Prime Minister Brown and his family had been trying to keep their son's health information private. They said they were devastated by the diagnosis being made public. It has been alleged that that information was obtained by hacking into the infant's medical records. The paper denied that allegation today. They say a member of the public voluntarily gave them that information. The unfolding scandal here is not about one rogue paper. It appears to be about one huge rogue company. The story about Gordon Brown's infant son was not a News of the World story. It was published by another Rupert Murdoch-owned paper called The Sun. Yesterday, Mr. Brown accused a third Murdoch paper, the Sunday Times, of employing, quote, known criminals to gather personal information on his banking, legal files, and tax affairs. Beyond the illegal hacking and spying allegations, there's also a bribery component here. The News of the World editor at the time of the dead child phone hacking admitted to a parliamentary committee that the paper bribed police officers for information. The bribery allegations themselves are lurid. The Murdoch paper paying police officers tens of thousands of pounds in cash for information, sometimes handing over envelopes of cash at a fast food chain drive-through. So far, the business and financial implications for Mr. Murdoch and his media companies have been swift. The 168-year-old News of the World tabloid will not see its 169th year. The paper has been shut down. Today, Mr. Murdoch's company ended its years-long $12 billion effort to take over the British Sky Broadcasting Company. That news sent the satellite broadcasting company's stock tumbling. Had Mr. Murdoch acquired that company, he would have controlled 40% of all commercial television in Britain. The family that sold the Wall Street Journal to Rupert Murdoch now says it regrets doing so. The business consequences of this scandal are still unfolding, but the legal consequences started unfolding years ago. In 2007, a News of the World editor and a private investigator hired by the paper were jailed for the phone hacking, which they admitted to. The editor, Andy Coulson, denied knowing anything about the phone hacking, but he resigned anyway. The Conservative Party and its leader, David Cameron, then hired that editor, Andy Coulson, to be a communications director for them. Last week, he and another editor were arrested on corruption, hacking, and bribery charges. An editor at The Guardian newspaper says he told Prime Minister David Cameron's office about Coulson's involvement in the scandal at the time Cameron was hiring him. Cameron denied those charges today in Parliament and announced an official inquiry.
There needs to be root and branch. After listening carefully, we've decided the best way to proceed is with one inquiry, but in 2 parts. I can tell the House that this inquiry will be led by one of the most senior judges in our country. The inquiry will be established under the 2005 Inquiries Act, which means it will have the power to summon witnesses, including newspaper reporters, management, proprietors, policemen, and politicians of all parties, to give evidence under oath and in public.
Here in the United States, Democratic Senators Barbara Boxer, Jay Rockefeller, Frank Lautenberg, and Bob Menendez have all called for investigations of Murdoch's company by the Justice Department and the Securities and Exchange Commission. The senators say they want to know if Americans had their privacy invaded and whether or not any U.S. laws were broken. In the House, Republican Peter King of New York has asked the FBI to investigate whether News Corp journalists tried to get a hold of 9/11 victims' phone records. A journalist at The Guardian, which spent years reporting on this story, has promised the Associated Press today that we do not yet know everything there is to know about this scandal, that there is more to come. The outstanding questions at this point are whether or not this scandal, frankly, has the potential to bring down the British government, and whether it also may rock the Rupert Murdoch media empire around the world, and here in the U.S., where it includes not only the dominant business newspaper in the country, the Wall Street Journal, but also the dominant media voice of the Republican Party and conservative politics in the Fox News Channel.